Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
Have you ever noticed that how people can experience the same exact situation and walk away feeling completely different? One person leaves angry, another leaves thoughtful, a third might even feel compassion. The event was identical, yet the emotional experience was entirely different. That observation reveals something important about life. And what happens to us matters. But the meaning we assign to what happens often matters even more. And that realization leads directly to one of the most important lessons in personal and spiritual growth. There is a moment in almost everyone's life where something happens that seems unfair. A conversation goes wrong, someone misunderstands us, a relationship shifts, a plan collapses. And in that moment, the mind quickly begins to look outward. What caused this? These differences? Who is responsible? Why did they do this or do that? But ancient spiritual teachings invite us to look somewhere else first, not outward, inward. Hi, I'm back with another key to soul progress, and this is a simple one to remember. But it's not always easy to do, especially in the moment, especially around spontaneous things that come up and crop up for us. And that is master your reactions. This key may sound straightforward, yet it holds profound implications for how we experience life, because the truth is that much of our daily distress does not arise solely from events themselves. It arises from how our mind interprets those events. And I've talked more actively about this in this first episode of April, so you may want to go back and listen to that. Because we know that ancient wisdom, traditions, and spiritual psychology have long taught that the mind is constantly assigning meaning to everything we encounter. And those meanings quietly shape our emotional responses. And when we learn to observe and guide our reactions, just as we learn to observe our thoughts, which I talked about in the past episode, we begin to reclaim something very important. And that is our own internal stability, our inner stability, our inner peace, our inner calmness. Because many people believe that emotional life is determined by circumstances. And if things are well, they feel calm. If things go poorly, they feel upset, unsettled. But the reality is more complex. Imagine two people caught in a rainstorm, and it's raining really heavy. One complains about the inconvenience. Another laughs and enjoys the unexpected moment. The rain did not determine their experience. Their interpretation did. And in the same way, situations in our lives often trigger emotional reactions that seem automatic. But those reactions are not actually created by the event itself. They are created by the story the mind begins telling about the event. Think of the mind as wearing an invisible pair of lenses. These lenses are shaped by our experiences, expectations, memories, and beliefs, values, and so much more. Every event we encounter passes through those lenses. Two people can witness the same moment, yet their lenses cause them to interpret it very differently. One lens may emphasize criticism. Another may emphasize understanding. Another may emphasize opportunity. Spiritual growth involves becoming aware of the lenses we are using, because when we see through them consciously, we gain the ability to adjust them, to adjust the lenses, to adjust the colors by which we are seeing things by. Consider a simple everyday example. You send a thoughtful message to someone you care about. An hour passes, no response. And at first, the silence seems neutral, but gradually the mind begins to interpret it. Maybe they're ignoring me. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe they're upset. Soon, the emotional reaction builds. A message was sent. No reply yet arrived. Everything else was interpretation. Later, you might discover that the person was simply busy or distracted. They didn't get your message. They didn't see it until late at night, for example. The event itself was neutral. The message was sent. The reaction came from the meaning assigned to it. I said in the last episode, I'll say it in this episode. The meaning that we attach to things inspires us sometimes in ways that we are not to our betterment, to our greater good. So some reactions feel especially powerful. Why is that? For example, a small comment might feel disproportionately upsetting. A minor misunderstanding might linger in the mind for hours, sometimes days. Why does this happen? Ancient wisdom traditions suggest that reactions often reveal deeper emotional patterns within us. Moments in the present sometimes awaken memories or beliefs from long ago. And a brief interaction can remind us of earlier experiences where we felt unseen, dismissed, unloved, misunderstood. The mind may not consciously remember those earlier moments, those earlier details, but it doesn't mean it's not grouping it, it's not forming things, it's moved into our unconscious level of our mind, outside of the awareness of our conscious mind. And we have to remember that emotional imprint remains with those situations in which we felt unseen or unloved or dismissed or misunderstood. They have an emotional reaction, and they do imprint itself moved into the subconscious level within us and unconscious. And when a current event resembles the old experience, the reaction becomes amplified. Understanding this does not mean blaming the past. It means recognizing that our inner world contains layers of experiences that influence how we interpret life itself. Imagine someone who has spent many years being reliable for the people around them. They remember important days. They show up when others need help. They're quietly carrying responsibility that others often overlook. They pay attention to details. Relationships are important to them. And then one day someone says, almost casually, "You take things too seriously." That comment may not have been intended as criticism, but the reaction is immediate and something tightens. Because the comment touches a deeper question. Am I appreciated? And am I understood? The moment becomes emotionally significant not because of the sentence itself, what was said, but because of the meaning it awakens within the person. And spiritual teachings encourages us to observe moments like this carefully, not to suppress the reaction, not to judge ourselves or feel for feeling it, but to ask a deeper question. What inside me reacted so strongly? And this question shifts the focus from blame to awareness. And we're in the process of continuing to build awareness. That's what I talked about in episode 1, awareness of your thoughts. Now we're talking about awareness of your reactions. Because awareness opens the door to growth. And if you're walking a spiritual path, you want to have continuous growth. We all will go, 2 steps forwards and 1 step back at times, or 3 steps forwards and 5 steps back at times. But we do want consistent spiritual growth and awareness if we're walking a spiritual path. Let me tell you a story. And this is about 2 colleagues who were both overlooked for an opportunity that they both hoped to receive. This is about two colleagues who were both overlooked for an opportunity they hoped to receive and thought they were well intended to be able to receive. And the first one interpreted the situation as proof that their efforts were unrecognized. Frustration grew, motivation faded. However, the second colleague felt disappointed as well. But instead of assuming rejection, they asked themselves what the experience might be showing them. And they explored new directions. And within a year, they found themselves in a position far better suited for their abilities. Same event, different interpretation, different outcomes. The other one sulked and said that they're not going to do anymore. They don't, because their motivation faded. So clearly, how we interpret something and what we do after that does matter. Imagine that each of us carries an invisible backpack through life. And inside that backpack are memories, expectations, and emotional experiences gathered for many years. And most of the time, we forget the backpack is there. It's invisible, but what's in it has an impact upon us, whether we're aware of it or not. And certain situations suddenly make it feel heavy. A remark reminds us of an old disappointment. A misunderstanding recalls an earlier hurt. The moment itself may be small, may be insignificant, quote unquote, but the emotional weight inside the backpack magnifies the reaction. Spiritual growth involves gradually examining what we are carrying and deciding what no longer needs to remain in the backpack. And a way to describe this would be from a spiritual perspective, that is. Well, it's like life is a mirror. And when we stand in front of a mirror and notice something on our face, we do not become angry with the mirror. The mirror is simply showing us what is there. Life works in a similar way. Situations reflect aspects of our inner state. Patience, attachment, fear, compassion. When we begin to see life as a mirror rather than a battlefield, reactions become less threatening. They become informative. Learning to master our reactions does not mean pretending difficult situations do not exist. It does not mean tolerating harmful behavior. What it means is that we stop allowing every external event to determine our inner state. This is where emotional freedom begins. This is where we reduce the reactiveness that event creates within us. And we start to think about things from another level. And this is what the soul wants. It wants us to look at things from the higher level, not the lower carnal mind level, but the higher God-centered level. And this is what I call as emotional freedom begins when we do that. Because when reactions become guided by awareness rather than impulse, circumstances lose some of their power over us. And one simple practice that can begin this shift is that the next time something unsettles you, pause. Instead of reacting immediately, ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about this moment? Often the answer appears quickly, and once the story becomes visible, it can be examined. Sometimes the story is accurate, sometimes it is not, but awareness always brings clarity. Let me give you an example, something that happened to me more recently. I was in a family meeting, and a couple of the members said, we think we need more people to carry this project off that we were engaged in. And I said, well, we're almost there. We can be able to get there without having so many people, because the more people we have, the more decisions take a time to make, the people take to make the decisions, because they're looking at things from a different perspective. But then they felt they did want to, have more people involved. To make a long story short, we got all people, more people involved. Like maybe, 6 other people, I think it ended up being involved, in addition to the original people that were on the committee trying to have this project take off. And lo and behold, we had different reactions. And so one of the things I ended up doing was just sitting and observing their reactions and then my reactions to their reactions, and realize, you know what? There are these patterns that do exist. And instead of shutting it down or trying to avoid it, just bring it up. Just give your observations. Say what you're noticing. Invite other people to have thoughts about this. Because when we start to do that, it not only calms the group down, it calms you down too. Because you're not willing to get involved and swim in the waters of reactivity, of what's going on, and who's taking too long, and who's talking too much. That's the lower nature. When you're walking a spiritual path, you're actually trying to say, okay, how can I help here? How can I facilitate the discussion? How can I say a little prayer in the midst of people going back and forth? Because of the time that they're taking to think about it, make some decisions about it, and then one member have a different perspective, and another member says, no, we need to do it this way. It's like, how do you help them to be able to have the conversation without you're reacting, overreacting, or trying to control the show, but just acting in a way that you're saying, what would Christ do here? What is my soul giving me the prompting to do here? That's your intuition. And how can I be kind? And how can I ask for us to do a little prayer in the midst of people's differences of opinion? Do we do enough of that? I don't think so. I think we just get back into the reacting mode, everyone in a group. But there's got to be some individuals, especially if you're walking a spiritual path, who's willing to be able to say, what needs to be done here? And sometimes you can't actively say, let's pray about it. You can just do the prayer internally, and then observe and notice what's going on inside of you, and also what's maybe going on in the reactivity of the conversation that's taking place. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is transcend the reactions, moving them into more mastery of your reactions. And hopefully, in their own way, they're trying to do the same. So what we're talking about here is understanding that your internal reactions have an impact, and that you can be able to gain the mastery step by step, day by day, or you just can swim into the waters and get so reactive that you end up all going downstream, going nowhere, and not having a direction of how you want the meeting to end or the interaction to end. So I would say that one simple practice you can begin in terms of making a shift, whether you're in a group or not in a group, and where there's a lot of reactivity that's taking place. So the next time something unsettles you, just pause. That's what I had to do in this meeting. I just had to pause. I love them all. But it doesn't mean that I'm frustrating. right? But it does mean that I want the higher good to come out of the meeting. So instead of reacting immediately, once you pause, ask yourself, what story, in this particular case, when you're looking at it for just yourself, what story am I telling myself about this moment? And when you're in a group, you start to look for themes. What's going on here? What are the themes that are taking place here? What is it that we can agree upon? And what are the rough edges to this? So you're looking at it in a loving and a kind way. And you're also looking at yourself in a loving and kind way when you ask that question to yourself. What story am I telling myself about this moment, about this person, or about this situation? Often, the answer appears quickly. And once the story becomes visible, it can be examined. And sometimes the story is accurate and sometimes it is not, especially if you're really observing yourself and you're starting to be more and more aware, saying, no, that's not true. I fell off the path there. I went the wrong direction. That's not true at all. That's not what the person said. That's not what my experience has been with that person at all. So I'm interpreting something or reacting in a particular way that is not in the best interest of myself, nor is it in the best interest of the relationship of with the person that you're interacting with or the situation that you find yourself in. Because ultimately what we're trying to do is to build awareness, which brings clarity. Clarity to the next best step that we need to take, clarity to what may be really going on, because when we start to clear the space internally within us, it does create an opportunity for our soul, that sage self that exists within us, to speak through us and with us and help us to ponder in a greater way. So mastering our reactions is not something we achieve instantaneously. It takes time. It really does depend on what the issue is that's going on, because sometimes we can have really big reactions to things and we need time to calm down. We need the time to reflect and process. We need time to pray about the situation. That's all within that pause moment that we sometimes need to take. It is something we practice throughout life. But every time we pause and respond with awareness rather than impulse, we strengthen our inner stability. We strengthen our inner self and our inner resolve to be our best self in all situations. And we learn how to be doing it right in the midst of learning about how we react to that person, that situation, that comment that was made to us. Gradually, life begins to feel less chaotic because we're building that inner stability. And because we are seeing them and the situation and our internal self more clearly. That's the clarity. That's what we are striving for. Where there is fog, we have to wait for the fog to clear and know that we're in a fog. We say, I'm just really overreactive here right now. And then what we do less of, and I think we need to do more of, is invite the Holy Spirit to have to cleanse and purify the area in our minds, our hearts, our four lower bodies, our being, our world, that we can be able to have a greater understanding, have a greater clarity, have a greater sense of being anchored in something greater than ourselves. Something to think about. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.